Thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Nick, and good afternoon to your listeners. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show. So I was born in Soweto in 1974. So I grew up pretty much in the height of the student uprisings. Spent my entire schooling life pretty much in schools in Soweto until the advent of the Model C schools in 1990, where I got an opportunity to break out of Soweto and get into school with kids from other parts of the city, and it was an eye-opener at the time. I mean, it was a really interesting experience, but really a homegrown Soweto boy, Joburg boy.
And tell us, Nkuli, what was your dream career when you grew up?
As a kid, I loved building structures. I mean, I was passionate about building structures. I had a drawer at my grandmother's house that had all kinds of tools, and I'd look forward to going there every weekend and pull the tools and start to build things. So, I eventually grew up to want to become a civil engineer. And I saw myself building bridges, building big structures. But so it turns out that I was completely useless in courses like mechanics and so on. And that led me to drop out of the course. Ideally, I would have loved to be an engineer, but I guess that's where I learned that passion and skill are two different things. Right. So I ended up not being an engineer, but I got into technology where I am now.
And tell us, Nkuli, who inspired you in your early days?
Oh, it must be my grandmother. I mean, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. I mean, she was a strict disciplinarian, but very warm, very loving. I mean, this woman defied all odds. In the height of apartheid, as a black woman, she managed to travel overseas, travel a number of countries, and came back with new experiences. And she always said to me, "Nothing is impossible." She was the first person in the family, so to speak, to break out of the country and explore the world and come back with experiences that inspired us. And I've always been inspired by her to travel. And that desire for travel led to the choice of career that I'm in today. I have traveled quite extensively, and I guess I owe it to my grandmother, definitely.
Now, Nkuli, you are one of the top technology leaders on the continent. You started your career at Cisco, then Ericsson in Nigeria, Sun Microsystems, NNA, country manager for Dell for 6 years, and today and then obviously Vodacom and MicroStrategy. Yeah. So if you look back over your career, can you maybe share a couple of highlights that stand out?
Look, I think it was the inception, right? So I somehow managed to get into a Lotus Notes development program in 1998, and my ambition at the time was I want to come out and become a software developer, and I'll grow in that path. And certainly at the end of the program, I got an offer to join Investec as a Lotus Notes developer. Now, a bit of a funny story is that, when you grow up in the townships that are locked in, as a young boy, your ambition was to get a good car and potentially just get out and get yourself a townhouse. And that is what success looked like. And all I wanted was to earn 5,500 rands, get myself a city golf and go and, show that I've achieved. Right. So I got this job. I got offered a week before I was due to start. A recruiter came to speak to us, in the course, and introduced the Cisco systems to me in particular, and said, "You know what, you want to go and work for Cisco?" And I said to them, "Look, if they can pay me this money, I'll consider it." I went into Cisco, I interviewed, and my first offer was double that salary, and it was just a game changer. Because remember, at the time, it's all about how much money you make. And, do you work for an organization that is a corporate and global? And I got all of those all in an instant. And from then on, it was just, exponential growth in terms of my career, from one role to the next. And I think I owe it back to that decision, the time where I got offered the opportunity. I think maybe the most profound was in 2006 when I got the chance to go and live and work in Nigeria for Ericsson. And I got to Nigeria for the first time. And, when you land at the airport, it appears to be very hostile because you are not used to this kind of an environment. And I was really scared, thinking, am I really gonna, come out of this alive? But I tell you now, it was probably the best experience of my working life, getting into Victoria Island, getting to work with Ericsson, getting to understand the Nigerian people, getting to understand traveling into their homes on weekends, out of town and so on, and getting to learn the culture, but also then getting to succeed in the role that I was given to succeed. I went into Nigeria against the better judgment of some of my leaders who had said that I was not ready for it. I took the bull by the horns, and it really changed my life. I got to learn telecommunications deeply. I got to learn how to manage diverse teams, right? Race, gender, religion, and so on, all in an interdimensional kind of an environment. For me, that was an absolute highlight in my career. I guess it stands out for the longest time.
And Nkuli, tell us, what was the turning point in your career?
The turning point in my career, I guess it still remains the opportunity to become an expatriate. I think having to go global, I got a job to become the global account manager for the MTN group, where I got to travel to 18 countries where MTN was based. And in that job in particular, again, it was an opportunity that I was put forward by my boss and against the will of the VPs at the top, who still felt that I was not ready enough for it. He inspired me, said, go for it, just go take it. I ended up bringing half the company's revenue in one account, right? So grew the accounts in multiples and won awards globally. It became something that, I got recognized for. So for me, I think it was the ability to be given a challenge that is seemingly impossible because I'm not ready, but just diving into the deep end. So my experience being a GAM and traveling into, the rest of Africa and the Middle East was a true turning point in my career.
And Nkuli, what is driving you today?
Nick, I'm driven by the need to improve the lives of everyone that I come into contact with that is deserving, right? Youth in particular. I don't work for money. I think I've worked for money, I've made money, and I've lost money. I've learned that it does not bring sustainable happiness, so to speak. I've realized that we live in an interdependent society. And if we don't take care of those in need, our kids may not have a future. So I really believe in the shared value principle that, my leadership is purpose-driven. My leadership is purpose-driven. If I can make a change, a meaningful change in someone's life, then I can sink myself into that effort with my heart and my soul, to make sure that I achieve it. And the results become inevitable. So, for me, I think it's really to understand that we live in a very unequal society, probably one of the most unequal societies in the world today. And it's not really about us as leaders. It's not really about us as the ones that are privileged. It's really about the others. It's really about what change we can make in order to create a sustainable environment amongst us. So really our corporate goals really need to be driven around that shared value principle and understanding that we live within a community. So for me, that's what drives me. What really, really attracts me is solutions that are geared towards changing and fundamentally transforming the lives of everyone.
And Nkuli, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, Nick, the world is changing at an exponential rate, right? Humanity is undoubtedly at risk with the rise of automation. Now, it's arguable, whether or not the EQ element of machines will prevent machines from becoming dominant, however automation is taking place, right? So for me, the future of leadership requires leaders that have vision, leaders that are willing to take calculated risks, and more importantly, leaders that nurture human capital. I mean, there's that fundamental element of EQ that human beings have that machines don't have. And you need to be able to nurture that and to ensure that you create a sustainability in terms of the workforce, right? So, I believe that leaders require multidimensional skills, that balance the promotion of human capital development and organizational goals, which is typically a tightrope. How do you drive for performance while developing the people, But bearing in mind that we live in a highly dynamic and competitive environment, our competitors are no longer our peers. Our competitors are coming from different industries. So you need to make sure that as a leader, to sustain and grow, you understand the concept of disruption and what it means, understanding that you could be disintermediated at any point in time. So you've got to have what, my ex-chairman, John Chambers, used to mention, saying, you could have a healthy paranoia. Always look to disintermediate yourself before you get disintermediated. So those are the kind of skills that leaders need to have. And that requires you to have confidence in your vision, to be able to execute your vision, to be able to take risks and understand that, rather fail fast than to be caught disintermediated at a later stage. And that requires that you set plans that put the organization on the right trajectory, right? We don't have a crystal ball. I guess if you had a crystal ball, all of us would be rich. But we are here to solve problems. If there were no problems to solve, then we have got no place in the economy. So for me, it's important that leaders are always forward thinking. Leaders are always ensuring that you develop human capital, but you keep learning, right? The future of leadership is in constant learning and looking out for opportunities.
Nkuli, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders? In other words, what does it take to build the next generation?
I'll underscore the word selflessness as a leader. The era of hierarchical leadership is gone, right? Where there's a pyramid and there's a leader at the top, or there's a corner office that's closed off, right? We have entered the age of what I call network leadership, right? You need to regard yourself as one of the team instead of the head of the team. Understand that after all is said and done, when the titles are stripped, we are all the same. We all breathe the same air. We all encounter life pretty much. The stimulus of life is the same across the board. So, you've got to come down from ivory towers as a leader and be with the team in the field. You've got to be in a position where the team regards you as one of their own, that they can trust you, that you can lead by example, but you lead from the ground, right? So yes, we are privileged as leaders because we probably have got education or skill or whatever the case is that is probably better than the others. Our role is to ensure that we pass that on. So, for me, when I say selflessness, I'm talking about splitting that wisdom and sharing that wisdom, right, with the team and building and multiplying yourself. If you're good at something in particular, share it with others, and the hand that gives, the hand that receives. And I believe that if you do that, you at least make a mark in the world. So I think focus on talent from a corporate perspective and bet on transformation of the people under the most uncertain conditions.
Now, Nkuli, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own leadership brand?
Look, social media has become, Nick, the basic platform for communication. We could argue that at length, but it really is the fundamental platform for communication. WhatsApp is a social media platform that has now grown into business. okay, and it has become a business platform, for example, and so are all the other social media platforms. I mean, which means this communication channel is live 24/7. All right, you're constantly building your digital footprint, and you cannot delete it, right? So you know, I believe that leaders need to take advantage of social media to tell their stories. You know, yes, there are privacy risks and so on, but you know, you need to essentially share what is really necessary, but to keep your story alive. It's important that you use social media to keep your story alive. Learn and share your lessons. It's important to grow yourself as a thought leader in a particular field than to be a generalist, and to attract following that believe in your path that you are driving down, because you spend time, you know, researching on that. And social media is a platform. It is open. It's 24/7. It's global. It touches all kinds of people at all different levels. You know, from an employment and a business perspective, employers and prospective business associates will use social media to, you know, to gauge your stability, whether be it for employment, be it for business opportunities. They look at your story. So that digital footprint that you leave is very, very important. You need to be present. You need to be visible. You need to be constantly communicating and building this picture. You cannot live outside social media if you are a future leader of tomorrow. So it's absolutely important that we take advantage of the benefits that it gives us.
Now, Nkuli, what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What would you say are some of the biggest challenges future leaders should expect to encounter in their career?
Look, it's happening now already, right? We are in an era of disruption. I think COVID-19 has fundamentally disrupted everything. And, you know, there comes a time when you have got to make a decision on behalf of the business under the most uncertain times. So I think the most important or the biggest challenge is, you know, making the right decision in managing transformation that is brought about by constant disruption, right? And that requires that you've got your finger on the pulse at all times, that you work in a collaborative way, that you learn, you seek to learn, and particularly from the youth, right? I mean, their worldview is very different. So getting to understand how they see the world today based on their experiences outside of being clouded by you know, history and so on. I think it's important to learn the art of managing transformation, and it's a very delicate balance to sort of strike. You know, how do you know you're making the right decision? How did the president know whether a lockdown would be the right decision? Yes, it's the right on the one side, it saves humanity, but it was completely disastrous on the business. I mean, 42% of SMMEs went out of business during the lockdown. Be that as it may, it was a decision that had to be taken. So I think it's, you know, the biggest challenge is to be decisive, but is to have conviction in the decisions that you make, with an understanding that you could be wrong or you could be right. I think disruption has brought that kind of a challenge. So for me, I think the biggest challenge is how do you then manage that transformation?
And Nkuli, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
So Nick, I mean, I could refer to the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report. I think that was issued initially in 2016, and then it was updated again, I think, in 2018. You know, that looks at the fourth industrial revolution and how it has brought us advanced robotics and autonomous transport, artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced materials, biotech and genomics and so on. You know, I mean, they were saying these developments will transform the way we live and the way we work. You know, some jobs will disappear and others will grow, you know, and jobs that don't even exist today will become commonplace tomorrow, you know. So what is certain is that the future workforce will need to align itself to a certain skill set in order to keep pace. And when you look at, you know, just taking an extract from some of those, I think number one is complex problem solving, okay, because we are in a constant flux. and it requires us to make decisions very quickly, and that requires you to have critical thinking. You've got to be able to think outside the box and think outside the structure. And I guess that's why Elon Musk is saying that there's just way too many MBAs in the US today. And then I can agree. There are people who go on and take on MBAs for the sake of taking MBAs, and then they come out with a structured way of thinking, and yet the world outside is very different, right? I'm not criticizing MBAs because I'm also doing one, but you're good for the right reasons, right? In order to gain those kind of complex problem-solving skills and critical thinking. More importantly, close to my heart is human capital development, and then comes emotional intelligence. I think we need to have emotional intelligence to be able to connect with our people at a level that automation cannot reach. And I guess another one is cognitive flexibility. It talks to the ability to adjust what you have learned in the face of the challenge that you face today or a problem that you've got to solve. So it's really around problem solving in a non-structured, non-mundane kind of a way, right? In a constant flux, in a constant flowing environment of uncertainty.
Now, Nkuli, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
This is one that's very close to my heart, right? I've mentored a number of people, professionals, and youth in particular. But one that is closest to me is a story of a lady called Julia, who joined my wife's business as a cleaner. Now, I guess her previous salary was not even 2,000 a month, prior to, sort of joining, and had no matric. I think the last grade she did was grade 11. And, her life was doomed, living in a township, living in a shack with a, single mom with a baby, and just being that, sort of typical, what you call is in the early days, the not in education or employment kind of a group. And for me, the call here was in the belief that I have in women in particular, and having learned this from my grandmother, with the ability for women to be able to multiply. My grandmother used to make the impossible happen. We would have very little, but all of us would eat. And you generally wonder how, they sort of made this happen. And it's a quality that I've seen in women, and Black women in particular, who happen to be at the bottom of the pyramid. My belief is that if we are to transform our society, that's where we really want to focus in. I think far too many programs focus on mentoring graduates or mentoring people with capability. And capability has got a particular criteria to measure. But below that line of measurement, there's a whole society of people with talent and capability and the drive and the right attitude. And when we found Julia, she was doomed to become a cleaner for the rest of her life. But I can tell you that fast forward 2 years after working with her, she had multiplied her income at least 10 times, number one, which is important because what it means for the extended family that she has got to support, right? It starts to change their lives. But more importantly, from her career perspective, my wife would be able to send her out on missions in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, all by herself to go and do complex installations, and she would do it. And for me, that said to me, with the right attitude and the willingness to learn, you can change anyone and you can make anyone achieve what they want to achieve. We should not judge a book by its cover. We really need to be intent in terms of driving that transformation, especially in the most unattractive environments, right? And that's where we really need to focus. And I chose to focus on working with someone like that. There are others that I've worked on, like her, for example, but she is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely, the level of intelligence that young lady has was astounding. But society had, because of the society that she grew up in, had not given her that opportunity, and we were able to give her that opportunity, and she was able to fundamentally change her life, and this is a path that we keep changing. So if I focus on that, and it's really about selfless leadership, right? It's not about doing it with an expectation or to go tick a box and say, from a PE perspective, this is 1, 2, 3, or 4 that we've done. But it's really just about dedicating your time selflessly as a leader, your valuable time, and going out and support us. So, it's a story that really, really resonates with me very well.
So, Nkuli, who are the role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
Nick, there are a few. Top of the list definitely has to be Stephen Covey. He teaches about principle-centered leadership. Others include Steve Jobs for his unbelievable vision, Elon Musk, just in sheer guts and taking risk, Jack Welch in terms of human capital building. And then, of course, there are others that have not yet authored, but are still visionary leaders today, right? One of them is my own EVP, Christian Hiller. He believed in me and took a risk, as well as having a couple of other leaders. The late Inan Kanza was a young achiever who said he lost his life to cancer. He was a natural talent builder. Jonas Fukushi, current CEO at BCX, gave me my first shot in IT and continues to be a giant in the African tech space. And of course, guys like Ralph Mupita, who's risen to the top of MTN Group. And if you follow him on LinkedIn and you see how he consistently encourages his teams to succeed, as a demonstration of network-centered type of leadership.
Thank you. And Nkuli, how can our listeners connect with you and where should they follow you?
Nick, I am active on LinkedIn as Nkuli Mbundu, Nkuli Mbundu. Always sharing content in LinkedIn, and that's pretty much where I spend time. I used to be on Facebook, but not so much, because I believe the platform is sort of shifted in terms of the fundamentals. Pretty much on LinkedIn is where you will find me as Nkuli Mbundu.
Now, last but not least, Nkuli, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own leadership?
Absolutely. Look, Nick, the COVID-19 pandemic was what we would refer to as a near-death experience for many, right? You didn't know whether you were going to contract this disease. You didn't know whether you would die from it. You didn't know prior to to us realizing that the recovery rates are probably higher and understanding that it hit more the people with morbidities, and more the elderly and so on. But it was a near-death experience nonetheless, right? And for me, it says, this called on humanity to press a reset button, okay, and introspect on what is really important to come out of this race, this rat race of getting bigger and better all the time at the expense of the environment that we live in. It taught me that we are a connected species, and that's perhaps the biggest lesson for me, that we are essentially one. And therefore, leaders need to understand that we need to develop and nurture talent selflessly, right? We need to be very conscious of the environment within which we live, both people and the environment. If you are privileged, share your wisdom to uplift those who are not, for the sustainability of the human race. Going back to the shared value principle, it says that we live in an interdependent society. So therefore, when you need to share as a leader. That is my parting shot.
Well, Nkuli, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and reminding us that it is all about sharing your talents, sharing your insights for the benefit of others.
Absolutely. I think it's an imperative, Nick. We live in unprecedented times. We have got to take a different view to life, right? And I always say that I'm privileged enough to live in a suburb where I've got a 3-meter high wall with electrified fencing, and I can have all my leisure activities inside my yard, and it's fine. But those walls are not going to protect us against the people across the road who have nothing, So we need to break the barriers that we have as a society. And it starts with us as leadership. Break the barriers that you have and reach out and touch and work towards improving the lives of others. And it starts, charity starts at home. and we need to be able to do that in the workplace as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nkuli. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much again.